Morning. If you haven't been here before, this is our free 327 Chevy. If you have been here before, you know that we got it running just barely last episode. I'm rugged up this morning because it's 6 AM and about -3 and I couldn't sleep. The reason I couldn't sleep is this thing's got two issues. Well, maybe it's got more, but it's got two main issues. And so I can't install it in the car. So this episode is all about sorting out what's wrong with the 327. The first issue is it has excessive oil pressure. So much so that it broke an oil filter adapter, 2 sender units, and at one stage oil pressure even hit the roof. I've had a lot of trouble with oil this episode, haven't I? It's dripping off the roof. And of course, my head went straight to, it's a stuck pressure relief valve in the oil pump. But I think there's a little more to this one in the fact that the other issue contradicts that because there's not much oil pressure at the lifters. To get this thing to run, I actually found that I had to back the rockers right off, and excessive oil pressure, you'd go, of course you did. The lifters are pumping up. They're acting solid, they're holding the valves open. But no, I did think that myself, but that's not the case because I backed the rockers off to 0 to try to get a controlled oil leak to bleed off some pressure so the valves actually opened, and it still wouldn't run. In actual fact, it wouldn't even run when I gave them a quarter turn on the rocker stud of clearance. So they were chattering and it still wouldn't run. It didn't start to fire until I actually had 3/4 of a turn on that rocker stud off the rocker. Does that make sense? So I've got 3/4 of a turn clearance in the rocker. If I had to have a wild guess at it, I would say it's in excess of 60 thou before it'd even fire. Which that kind of rules out pumping up lifters, and the more I thought about it and looked at it, it didn't have a lot of oil pressure at the rockers. So there's our second issue. 1, excessive bottom end oil pressure. 2, where's the oil pressure going? Why isn't it getting to the rockers? Or it's getting there, but just not as much as I'd expect. And I know everyone's going, go straight to the oil pump. No, I want to leave it somewhat together so I can wind it up off the drill, and at least as I remove bits, find out what changed, as in, is it the lifters restricting the oil galleries, which is probably where my head is headed at the minute. I did have one moment where I was even thinking, has it spun a back cam bearing? But that was probably more so my lack of understanding how that back cam bearing works. The oil gallery actually runs around the outside of the bearing with a hole in the bearing, and that's how it oils that cam. So even if it's spun, the oil's still getting around the bearing, so I don't think it's that. I think it's definitely in the top end somewhere in that cam and lifters area. And then of course, once we've found what the restriction is, then we'll head to the oil pump. Anyway, right now, although freezing cold, I just want to get the dizzy out, intake off, rocker covers off, and then we'll start finding out what's going on. So one thing a lot of people said in the comments was, get a mechanical oil pressure gauge. I've actually ordered one now. Why didn't I do that initially? That was cheap, so was the other one it broke, and I wasn't expecting 100+ PSI of oil pressure from a motor that's been sitting in someone's shed for decades. I was actually probably expecting the opposite. So hindsight's easy. Give me a break on that one. But yeah, I've got one coming. But we don't need a gauge right now. We know it's got extremely high oil pressure, and I think from getting this apart, we'll see where the flow is going just by winding it over with the drill, and hopefully then my gauge will be here, and then we can test exactly what it's got accurately. This does feel a little bit like defeat pulling it back down, but at this point I know it's going to run. I know there's a couple of little issues, so now I don't mind throwing some money at it. Whereas before, again, easy in hindsight, I didn't want to chuck too much at it because I didn't know if it was going to rod knock or or whichever, so we know it's good. It sounded good. Distributor out for like the 11th time. Oh damn it. Manifold off, I've got to deal with coolant. I guess one positive is making this run stand. It's like a cradle, generic cradle that you buy, held by another cradle. I think I would have hated myself pretty bad if I'd thrown it in the car, and we're pulling it back out right now. I'm going to drop coolant out of everything because if the cam comes out, I've got to do it then. The clamp is literally frozen. Oh no, here we go. I should have run it first. Maggie, seriously. Look at them, 4 of them. They are literally doing this deliberately. Look, the 4 of them. In the top of that tree. Every time I try to talk, they're like, ooh, ooh, whatever the fuck they say. The 4 of them are literally sitting up there every time I go to speak. They're like, let's get him. This guy's an easy target. I should have ran it first so everything was nice and warm. Just suck it up, princess. Oh, Jesus. Yep, I know, I'm an idiot. It is dead set freezing. But I gots to know. So let's just pull it apart. My stupid little man brain wouldn't let me just stay in warm bed. It said, no, get out there and find out what's wrong with it, dickhead. So here we are. Stupid brain. That radiator actually probably have to come off, because if we do pull the cam out of this, I'm trying to turn a negative into a positive, even if I find the issue and it's just saying the lifters and I could reuse the lifters and reuse the cam. I'm actually thinking I want to go a bit better with this. I know the bottom end's going to be okay. We'll come back to that. If it turns out to be something in the cam base circle, okay, so in the cam base circle, I said in the last episode it was quite small when I saw it from underneath. If in actual fact it turns out to be something to do with the lifters in the oil galleries because of the small cam base circle, then it's been like this since it was built. This is going to be interesting, very interesting. Has it been running and then developed the problem? Or has it had the problem since the day it was put together? That is so cold and stuck together, I'm just going to knock that end off. I could just feel their pain if that was the case. Put it together, had issues. These are worth nothing back in the day. So was it sat in the corner because they did a home rebuild and it didn't work? Or didn't run? Maybe. That would be dead set soul destroying. Go to the trouble of rebuilding something. And because this has been rebuilt, I saw stamping on the conrods. Evidence of conrods being ground down, I guess for equal weight in conrods. Did they rebuild it and never got it to run properly? I am actually as dumb as a brick. I should have warmed this up. That would have been the sensible thing to do. Maybe that's why the magpies are cackling on. It's like, look at this idiot. They're heckling me. Warm it up, dickhead. Too late. What would they know? Probably a damn sight more than me at this point. Intake off. And although this sender has failed, I just remove it so I can get the manifold off. I'll put it back in just so we don't have oil leaks going everywhere. And yep, like I said, I got a mechanical one going. This episode should be called the "It's Easy in Hindsight" episode. Why didn't you get a mechanical gauge? Well, didn't expect 140 psi of pressure. Why didn't you just pull it all down first? I didn't want to. We save cars out of paddocks and you just chuck a few things at them and they tell you what they need. They run. Well, I did the same with the motor. Now we know it's going to run. Now we'll make it good. With a nice aftermarket cam, we'll make it great. Oh, look, I'm getting ahead of myself now. But we might even measure maximum lift of these valves to the retainers, valve spring pressures. We might even choose a camshaft. You know, go through. Here's a good one. We could go through the how big of a camshaft could I put in a stock motor, an otherwise stock motor, i.e., you know, standard valve springs. What pressure are they? What RPM can we send it to? Maximum lift, all those good things that are black magic to most people. And I know I've said it before, but bag everything. And I mean, it's easy to say, well, duh, they're the water neck bolts, but it is now. But if it takes me 2 weeks to get this cam and they're all mixed in here, it's pretty easy to forget. Of course, it doesn't help when you've got a memory that's like, what was I saying? Now, I have ordered some new parts, but I just remembered one I haven't ordered, and that's an intake gasket. I've ordered a sump gasket, some pulleys, because they were a problem last episode, an oil pump. Yep, you guys banking on the pump. Look, I think there's a problem with the pump too, with that valve stuck, but that doesn't explain no oil at the top end. So I want to do that first, while I can still wind pressure into it with the priming tool and that sort of thing. So moral to all that gibberish is I need to order an intake gasket. Not if you don't get this manifold off, you don't. I did a good job putting it on. Actually, my daughter did a good job putting it on. I plopped it, she torqued it. So it's her fault it won't come off. Alright, I just thought of another thing I need for this stand. A tool tray. Told you, this stand's going to get better and better every time we use it. My first thing last time was, are the lifters too low in the bores? Nah, I reckon I'm ruling that out. If you see, that's a lifter that's got clearance. Yeah, that's got clearance, so that's off the cam lobe. It's not that low. I guess I'll get them out and then measure how low the gallery is as opposed to where the oil channel is. But yeah, anyway, I'll get some gaskets off, get some rocket covers off, keep moving. See, I do need a tray or something here. There's a rookie error if ever I saw one. Sitting things in the intake while you disassemble. There's no future in it. I got a mate who actually pulled an intake manifold off and found a pair of scissors in there. How you going, Camel? Hey, Nick. Okay, here's where I want to start measuring shit. Not because I think I'm any sort of engine guru. I just want to know how high this cam, or low this cam lifts. I give it a quick off the rocket, off the what's that there? Valve spring retainer to the retainer seat to the spring seat. Jeez, it's that cold it's frozen my brain. Yeah, I give it a quick measure last time, and at the valve I didn't find it was lifting a whole heap, but I want to be a little bit more accurate. I think I'm going to measure the lifter in the bore and then the lifter at the top of its lift. Oh, because that's way more accurate, Mike. 3.63 mil in the hole. So it's 3.63 millimeters in the lifter bore, which does seem a little low, but I don't think that'll make any difference. Write it down, Michael. Stop talking. From memory, when I measured the off the valve, it was small, like pretty small, to the point where I think I actually giggled about how small the cam. I giggled about how small the cam was when I measured it. Get your mind out of the gutter. Alright, now I can actually turn this over. That's about max there. .4, 4.44. Add them two together. So if I add them together, it's 8.07 millimeters. That's not a lot. Convert that to thou. So millimeters to thousandths of an inch. 8.07. 317 thousandths of an inch. So 317. That's at the cam. 317 times 1.5. 1.5 because of the rocker ratio, and that'll give me the lift at the valve. 475. That's actually pretty healthy. When we get it out, we'll check if that's accurate. 475 is kind of a healthy-ish cam. There you go. I measured it. Hang on. Okay, so that just gets me on another train of thought. I measured it at the valve before. Did I measure it before or after backing off the rockers? Were the lifters collapsing? Were they not getting oil, and were they collapsing? Is that why they wouldn't run when I had preload? They weren't getting enough oil. If it only had 317 thou lift, and let's say the plunger on the lifter could plunge 200 thou lift, that's 117 thou lift. It's probably not even enough to take air in, and that would be not firing. Righto, let's keep going. New train of thought, and my darling wife brought me down a coffee because it's still freezing. And yes, it's too early for a beer. It's never too early for a beer. Who said that? You can't say that on camera. It's too early for a beer. And I can probably actually show you what I'm talking about. With these guys now with a little bit of oil in it, if you push on, so they're not on the cam lobe, right? They're not on the, the lobe. They're on the base circle, and you push on them like that, nothing happens. But take a look at this. So this is my other Chevy that I robbed the rocker covers off, and if you look, those ones, those lifters, they're not as deep in the lifter bore, but I don't think I'm really thinking anything on that anymore. But watch this, because it's got no oil pumping them up, you can actually push them down. Geez, that's a long way too. Let's measure that. So this is going to be a very sophisticated and accurate measuring technique, no doubt. 4.7 millimeters. What did I say? 4.7 mil. So if the lifter was collapsing, that left me 3.3 millimeters of lift, which is 129 thou at the lifter, times 1.5 equals, it's only 190 thousandths of an inch lift at the valve. Is that not enough to even get enough air? You got to bear in mind, it sounds like enough to open the valve to get air in it, but you got to remember the carburetor butterflies are shut too, so it's struggling to get air. Sort of makes sense, because I did find when I was winding it over, I had to really open the throttle a long way to get it to fire with the rockers tight. Anyway, that tells me probably nothing, but it's information I might need later on when I'm trying to figure out exactly what went on. The one thing that doesn't tell me, and still puzzles me greatly, but why did they start getting oil and start opening the valve correctly, or somewhat, the more I backed them off? I had a 1/4 of a turn clearance, still wouldn't run. Oh, that's fuel. I got to 3/4 of a turn clearance. That's what I was going to do. I was going to measure that, wasn't I? And that's when they ran, after 3/4 of a turn clearance. We'll find out how much that is. Anyone want to take a guess at it? How much you reckon? How much clearance is 3/4 of a turn? I'm going to have a wild guess and say like 60 thou, I think I said earlier. So I've got a 35. What's that one? Where's the other big fellas? Oh, here they are. They're at the wrong end. Start at this end, Michael. Well, there's 32 and 30. So that's 62 thou. Fitted easy, so it's more than that. And 28, so that's now 90 exactly. Oh, I can't quite get it in, so it's between 60 and 90. Do you really want to know? Yes, I've got to know exactly. Because somebody out there's took a guess at it and they want to know how close they were. Let's go 80. My fingers are that cold, I can't get them apart. Not my fingers, the gauges. I'll come apart, damn ya. 75. No. I'm now emotionally invested in knowing. The nearest I can guess is 64 thousandths of an inch clearance is 3/4 of a turn on that rocker stud. Why I found the need to know that exactly is beyond me. I just had to do it. My stupid brain, it won't let me stop. So 64 something wrong with me. 64 thousandths of an inch is 1.6 millimeters. Now I can tell you there's no engine that should be running that clearance at the rockers. Even like competition engines with big solid cams, solid flat tappet cams, I had a big block that ran 22 thousandths of an inch, and that was considered big. That was a lot of clearance, and this is triple that. Not quite, but you know what I'm saying. So there's something going on with why. We'll get to it, not overthink it, let's move on. So I'm now going to take every rocker off. There's that same rookie error. I'm destined for failure. Thank God the sun is coming out. Now I checked if these push rods were blocked. They are not. Here's proof. Blow straight through them. So when I was checking a couple of them, you went to blow through them. I only checked the rockers that I had out, but you went to blow through them and old looking oil come out. So if this has had not even enough oil pressure to push some of the old oil out, what's going on? Righto, get rid of my rookie error and let's wind it over off the drill and see what comes out of those lifters. Might get out in the sun, huh? Now that we've got a little bit of sunshine, I'll toughen up, silk. Cold, right? Okay, so this will completely debunk my idea of an oil restriction if I see oil go absolutely everywhere. Mental note, get a new battery. Jesus. What are you laughing at? You done laughing? Jeez, so who cleaned this out? Try and get my shadow out of the way. That's barely any. I reckon I'm going to start pulling lifters out and just seeing if the restrictions prior to the lifters or in the lifters. So I've swung that round so we don't have so many shadows, but I would have thought if I'm winding that, if you remember we wound this over had in excess of 140 psi. This should fill up so quick. Hey, look at this. Okay, look at this. Wait. I was just watching that side going, oh, that side's filling up. But no, look there. That's where the oil's coming from there, that's filling here. It's not coming out of the lifters pretty much at all, I would have thought. So I'm going to start removing lifters and just see if anything improves. Righto, so I've pulled 2 lifters out. The first, well, not the first 2, it's the last 2, because that's the front of the motor, but these are the closest to the oil galleries. Now, I guess let's explain that a little. The pump's in here, right? So the oil travels from the pump into the filter, up through the back of the block, and into that area there. Right, so there's one gallery that runs straight. With these plugs, when they're machining the blocks from factory, they drill holes through them, right? So that plug there is that oil gallery, if you will, there, and it runs right down, right through, and drops oil down onto the cam bearings. It does not run into the lifters. The lifters get oil from this one, and they're drilled right through, but they're the only ones in the whole motor that are dead-headed. They stop at the end of that. They don't come out the front end of the crankcase. Well, they do, but they're plugged, right? So, and I did have one good comment. It was like, check that these plugs aren't inserted too far, because if they were restricting the oil coming up, that's where it T-pieces and distributes, some going that way, some going into the lifters. And I looked at a couple of the other blocks, and they're probably hanging out further than the other block that we have. So moral to the story, these are the first lifters in the oil gallery. So if I wind over now, I've got a light in there so you can see in here. So if I wind this with the drill now and we see oil gush through, then the restriction's in the lifters. If we see no oil, then we know the restriction is before it gets to these galleries. I don't know, can I get you down in there? I'm going to try. I hope you can see in there. Ready? Hit the drill. You don't even have to look hard. You saw the oil starting to come up and out of there. So, and I mean, listen to the drill. It's doing it so much easier. I'll plop them back in. And I will number these as they come out. Actually, I don't feel like I want to number these as they come out because they're not going back in. Now let's listen again. That's just, and that's twisted like all crap. That's it. It's trying to twist everything. Well, she's now doing funky shit. I'm going to take all the lifters out. They're obviously a restriction, and we're going to check the depth of the oil gallery versus where those lifters are sitting, and maybe the lifters themselves. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping for joy and clapping my hands and saying I've found it just yet, but that wasn't great. That is a crazy difference in restriction, but I'm going to, I was going to say I might clean these out. I'll tell you what I will do. Pull them all out, go and get 2 new lifters, or maybe used ones, out of the shed, pop them in and just see if it goes back to being really crazy hard, or are these ones just blocked, or are they wrong? Anyway, we'll get to that. God, none of them are worn. Barely a mark on them. And I'm just placing these in the order of how they came out, probably only because of habit, not because I'm going to reuse them. I'll tell you what I will do. I'm going to pick 2 different lifters. Instead of these 2, I'm going to pick maybe these 2, put them in the back, no others, just those 2, and see what we get. See if it loads up that drill again. That's right. That's right. My drill is my barometer for pressure right now. If it loads up, plenty. If it doesn't, not much. I'm just thinking out loud, right? So this doesn't make any sense at all, but I'm saying it's got low oil pressure or low oil delivery to the top end. Well, how did they break the cam in? Because on cam braking, you get low levels of oil. The cam doesn't survive. Righto, so if I take, so I just went down and down. There, that's the last one on this side, that's the last one on that side. I'll put that in there. So that lifter came out of there and that lifter came out of there. I should have used maybe the ones that I knew I'd cleaned out, but okay, so that's, where's my light? I've got to tell you, I reckon there's something with those lifters. They're either the wrong lifters. I'd love to say they're blocked, but if they're blocked, they've got oil in them. Don't overthink it. Keep going. Okay, so we're back to this motor, and I've just pulled 2 lifters out of the back cylinder of that. Stupidly, I was in a hurry and I forgot to label which one was which, so that could become an issue, but we'll see. But here's what I'm going to do. This is probably going to be the most low-tech test you've ever seen. I'm going to clean those lifters out with brake clean, and then get the 2 lifters that were in there. I don't suppose I need to get the ones that are in there, but I'm going to get 2 lifters. I'm going to clean them out with brake clean, and then I'm going to put these 2 in, wind it off the drill, take them out, put the others 2 in, see if it sounds different, and then rotate them. Have these in the back, see if the front oil, and vice versa. Do you follow that? If not, let's just do it. This will go everywhere. Well, it should. Well, there's nothing in them, and they're out of the other motor, so doesn't matter if I mix them up. So same length, the oil gallery path is pretty much in the same spot. Oil gallery hole is not. That came out of the motor, that's out of the other motor we're going to test. Would it make any difference? Don't know, we'll see. But the hole's definitely bigger. So this is going to be a very redneck test, but these are the original lifters. Right, and they're the 2 out of the other motor. There is barely enough oil coming out around the body of them to call them oiled, and there's nothing coming out of the center. Alright, so I'll pull them out. Righto. Oh. So I'll throw that in the valley and damage the crap out of it. Let's see if I notice anything even remotely different. Oh, well, there's the difference. Oil just hit me. You can literally see the oil coming out of them. Okay, here's the next piece of this redneck test. Did you see the oil then though? Anyway, I'll do it again. Watch there. Look at it. That is pouring out. So if I do this, that should act, if my theory's right, that should act as a plug, and we'll see more oil than you know what to do with. Look at that. So, am I convinced the lifters are the problem? No, not at all. Do I think they were part of the problem? Yes, 100% I do now. And the reason I say 100% part of the problem is, you saw it yourself, increased oil flow around the lifter and out of the lifter, especially when I blocked the next gallery with the lifters that come out of it. Has it been like that since day one? Maybe. Maybe not too. Has it been like that since day one? Didn't get enough top end oil pressure, and so they've modified that pump. We won't jump to conclusions yet, but let's go. Let's just keep pulling down. You're sort of at the point where you go, do you want to throw lifters at it and just see what happens? Nah, I'm kind of committed, I reckon. Up here more than in here. What's the worst that could happen? I pull the cam out, cam looks fine, cam measures fine, cam is actually something okay. Put an oil pump on it, or at least check the oil pump, see somebody hasn't tinkered with it, and put that cam back in. I know I said I was going to rip into this thing and get it apart, and I'm committed. But I've now been standing here for about 15 minutes looking at these lifters going, why? Why wouldn't it run with no preload? And there's going to be that one guy who goes, it's just lifter pump up. It's just, it can't be. It seriously can't be. I'll go through it once. I'll go through it once more. They're not getting enough oil. Pump ups from too much pressure. They're not getting enough oil. I backed them off to 0. Well, there's no way it's pumping up at 0 and they're not getting enough oil. I then backed it off a quarter turn, and by my simple maths working out the gap in that rocker, if 3/4 turns was 64 or 65, I can't quite remember what I said, I think it was 64, that would make 1/4 turn a third of that, so that's about 21 and a bit thou lash. So there's no lifter pump up, is my point, with 22 or 21 thou lash and a low level of oil in the lifter. Were they collapsing? I don't know why that's bugging me so much. Let's just pull it down. I'm going to go one step further. There's going to be that one guy that goes, you're going to strip it down, why didn't you just do that originally? Well, I can tell you why, because that would be like pulling an old car out of a tree row, stripping it completely back down, to put it back together, to then try and fire it. I've been looking at that lifter for God knows how long now, and I can't see a damn thing wrong with it, but it's clearly an issue. So if I had have pulled this down originally, I would have went, that looks good, put it back in. I would have put it back together and then been in the same position I'm in right now. Right now, I've spent very little money on it, a little bit of time on it, and I now know that if we fix these 1/2, I think, coinciding issues, we've got something that could be really cool and definitely usable. So that's it. That's to you, that guy that said, why didn't you do that originally? I just told you. I guess what I'm saying is give it a chance to tell you there's a problem. Don't just assume it's all wrong. We might be sorting out a problem that they've had, I don't know, was it built 20 years ago? will tell you this, when I was putting this timing cover on prior, when we had the sump off and everything, I sort of ignored this. Thought, you know, let's see if it runs first. What about this? I would probably consider that somewhat excessive. If it hasn't been hitting the timing cover, nope, it would have come close. Like, it would have come really close. The only thing that's, I guess, is helping that is that cam gear, the way it's splined, is probably pulling it back. Yeah, maybe that's not as big an issue as I thought. Anyway, but that does look a bit nasty, doesn't it? There's a lot of... We'll rectify that. Oh, I better add that to the list. What is it? Timing chain. I've never had one of these before, but I bought it the other day. I can tell you it's been helpful pulling this thing apart. Lazy. And I lined up, there's a 0 there, and you see a little dot there. See, there, one of those teeth there. That's top dead center. So, yeah, just so I've got a starting reference. Cam, I need some bolts to go on the end of the cam and we'll pull him out. This is where you try not to bash up your cam bearings any. Look at the size of that base circle. I'll show you what I mean when I finish concentrating. That's what I mean about the base circle. It's almost level with the camshaft. Anyone that's seen a few Chevy cams, that is a small base circle cam. Is that why we've had lifter dramas and everything? We've tried to re-engineer everything. Anyway, let's not overthink it. Righto, I think we need to talk. Righto, so we'll start off with a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of knowledge. I guess I can share my knowledge on cams and things like that. It's probably not the greatest as far as, I don't think I'm an engine builder or anything ridiculous like that, but let me just show you something. See how the wear is mostly, I can't even talk, right? My brain's going that fast. See, the wear's mostly on one half of the lobe. The lower section doesn't even look like it's sort of been used. That's because cam lobes are actually machined slightly on an angle. They're not dead flat. That's what makes the lifter spin. There's a leading edge, if you will. The lifter will sit on that side more than this side, and the friction that actually makes the lifter spin. Which means they don't go flat. They don't just sit in the one spot and just wear a groove in them. I guess that's where a lot of the cheap camshafts failed, when you start to see some of the really, really cheap stuff come in. Yeah, a lot of them aren't machined on an angle, and you lose cam and lifters pretty much on break-in. That comes to the next point of what I was going to say. Notice when you get a new cam, right? Let's back up a bit. When you get a new camshaft, they won't look like that. They won't look polished. The lobe itself will actually look more like the journal or the shaft itself. I'm not talking billet rollers or anything. I'm just talking flat tappet camshafts. Now, the fact that this one has so much left on it, everywhere, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this motor has been broken in and not much else. Even the cam gear, the distributor gear, it's not even shiny in between the teeth. Over time, that distributor, you know, turning in that, it will, if I had one laying around, do I have a cam laying around? I think I've only got a roller cam. Anyway, I'll probably think later and go, yes, you do have one. I can't think Yes, I do. Actually, yes, I do. Wait. Nah, sorry, I can't give you much on that one. I wrapped him in Glad Wrap and WD'd him thinking I was amazing. Nah, it's got sort of gone surface rusty. I was going to show you the gear on this one. This has done a lot of Ks. Maybe you can see. And there's a shiny patch, which is the leading edge of that gear. Maybe not too. That doesn't look good anymore. Anyway. Sorry, I was hoping I could show you a bit better, but I genuinely don't think that cam's done a lot of miles. The one thing I will show you is this is a billet roller cam. And you look at the difference in the lobe profile, and I only say this for a bit of general knowledge. You don't know where people are starting from, and that's a roller lifter. So the contact patch, that way, not that way, dickhead. The contact patch isn't the same on a flat tappet cam as it is on a roller cam. Like there's a tip, so the cam lobe looks very arced, but if you can imagine, that guy peaks like that, whereas the other one is very peaky here. That's because I guess the flat bottom, it rides up the side of the lifter first, from one side of the lifter to the center to the outside, whereas that roller is always rolling right on the tip. That's why the profiles are different. You can pretty much identify a roller cam basically just by looking at the lobes. They're completely different. That's general knowledge. Getting back to what I was saying, don't reckon this has had a lot of time in the motor. Break-in only, maybe. So that's starting to make me dread what I'm going to find in that bottom end. Anyway, general knowledge. Okay, so the disappointing bit for me is it's got no numbers whatsoever. None. Let's measure the lobes. I don't know why I love this technical shit. I would have loved it even more if I could have just got a cam spec off the numbers on it, but I'll just write it all down in millimeters, then I'll convert it into thou. Base circle is 1015.35. Now I will say base circles are relevant. I'm only getting that as a baseline to calculate the lift. Not irrelevant if I knew the base circle of a standard cam. Then we could see how much that's been reduced. Hang on, there's another thing. Why do they reduce the base circle? I'll show you. Okay, so if you see, that's where the cam bearing sits, or that's the journal that goes into the cam bearing. If that lobe was bigger than that journal, it wouldn't go in. You've got to work your way into the block. But if that lobe, if any of them, it'd be like you'd be trying to wiggle it in, and once you got that bearing in, you wouldn't be able to wiggle it anymore to get the rest in. So the lobe tip has to be smaller than that journal. So when you get a big lift cam, they tend to take down the base circle, if that makes sense, because if it's got a big base circle and a high lift, it'll protrude above the cam bearing or the cam lobe. What do you call it? Cam journal? There you go. Yeah, so they tend to reduce the base circle. That allows decent lift, and I think we're going to find it has actually got decent lift, and still be able to install it. If you want to go bigger again, like race cams, they just have bigger journal bearings, and you can have the blocks machined or aftermarket blocks and all that sort of thing. But I'm thinking because of that base circle, this is going to work out as kind of healthy, which is contrary to what I initially thought. Is if you remember, I measured initially at the spring, but I now know that lifter wasn't getting oil, so probably collapsed, so it's diminished the lift at the valve. That's why I thought it was tiny. It's probably not. If I hold these two cams up, that's that kind of rusty one that was wrapped up, but look at the lobe journal there or the base circle, and look at the difference in the lobe to the actual cam itself, and then look at that one. That's what I mean about it's had its base circle ground right down. 322.44. Now your times are by the rocker ratio, which is 1.5, or on a modified small block you can actually go up to 1.6, but they're standard rockers, so they're probably like 1.46 or 1.48. It's technically 1.5, so I'm going to times it by 1.5. So yeah, it's a fairly healthy little cam. 491 thou lift at the valve. So that's after you calculate the rocker ratio. That was on the exhaust, but 483 on the intake. That isn't really that bad a cam. That's actually fairly healthy. Well, it's probably a bad cam. It's probably the stem of all evil in this motor, because it's probably reduced base circle, got to change lifters, probably not right lifter, maybe oil gallery in the wrong spot because of reduced base circle, I don't know, but everything's pointing towards this had the problem from the minute it was assembled. I'm going to call it a bit early tonight, or today. It's beer time early because my mum and dad have just driven in the gate from my hometown, because it's state of origin night, so we're going to have a couple of quiet ones, and I'll probably yell at the TV, so go the Blues. But tomorrow we'll probably get into the bit that we all want to see, and that's what's going on with that pump. Unfortunately, I think in my head I've already kind of figured out what's going to go on with it. I think somebody's tampered with it, but that camshaft has shocked me that it is a little bit bigger lift than I thought. I'll see you in the morning. We'll knock this pump out, see what's going on with it in the morning. Right. So this morning's going to take a turn that I didn't quite expect, because my mechanical oil gauge has turned up. So now, as much as I convinced myself yesterday that the lifters were restricted, you could see the excess oil with the change of lifters, I'm actually going to put oil back in it, put the cam back in it, and then do exactly the same again with those lifters. Put the original lifters in, then put the two lifters out of the other motor in, and see what we're actually talking PSI wise, because I need to convince myself 100% that's where the issue is starting, or that's one of the issues that we're dealing with. So yesterday afternoon I spent a fair bit of time trying to convince myself it's just lifters, so just throw some lifters in it and call it good. But I spent the rest of my time camshaft shopping and convinced myself that I want to make this great, not good. So I think I've chosen a cam and lifters, but I want to convince myself beyond a shadow of a doubt, like, how much extra pressure are we getting? That went in flawlessly, even though I was gibbering on like an idiot. Yeah, how much extra pressure are we talking from the restricted lifter, I'm calling it restricted lifter, to the one that was flowing oil through it better? Anyway, let's get into that. I think the main reason I want to change cam as well, rather than just chuck lifters at it, is that reduced base circle. It obviously takes a different lifter, because that's the lifter off this guy, and the oil gallery, believe it or not, is lower, which I thought a reduced base circle lifter, if it sat lower, you'd want it higher. The other difference is that groove. That's really deep. That's the lifter out of the other motor, and that's really shallow. But anyway, stop gibbering, chuck them in. So we'll put our restricted lifters first, and then we'll chuck the other ones in. I'll get my tool. Yeah, I know, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, but I've got to do this for my own sanity. I've got to know. Oil back in, cam back in, lifters back in, but I'll be able to sleep at night. And also, if I find, yep, it looks like there's a big restriction, but there's no real difference in pressure, then I'll know I'm barking up the wrong tree. I'll give it a couple of quick goes just to get any oil out of the line. It's brand new. Air out of the line so I don't get a false reading. Here we go. Well, I reckon that's oh, we're losing oil out the front. Of course we are, because the cam's got no timing cover on it, but I think I've primed that enough that I can officially say there's no air in that sender. And I didn't like what I saw. So if you keep your eye on that gauge, I'll try and stay out of the shadows. It literally went off the gauge. Slowly got there, but it went past 80 psi. That's past 80 psi and still climbing. So I'm still not going to get an accurate answer because it went past 80 psi. That's as high as the gauge reads. So that one out. That one out. The wider groove lifter in. And same with that one. Put everything in the valley so it can get forgotten about. And look, steady at 41 or 42. I'm not cutting away, that's just over 40. Sorry about the crazy camera work, but just to show you I'm not manipulating that in any way, shape or form. Off the gauge past 80, I held that onto it 42-ish PSI just from changing the lifters. So we've got approximately 40 plus PSI difference by changing the lifters. Craziness. It is making a very, very strong argument for just throwing a set of lifters at this thing. I've got the sump undone anyway because the timing case had to come off, so I've got to redo the sump. So we'll pull the pump, take a look at it and see what we find. What do you reckon? Cam and lifters or just lifters? I think I want to go cam and lifters. I'm going to be putting cam bearings in this so I don't concentrate on what I'm freaking doing. Oh, on that subject, remember I said, oh, could it be a cam bearing? No. I think I did touch on it. Nah, that was my lack of understanding of how a cam bearing worked. The oil gallery cannot be blocked even if you spun a cam bearing, because the gallery runs around the outside of the bearing case. I will inspect cam bearings from the bottom, but it couldn't be the restriction, as we've just found. That was the other thing too. You might go, well, the lifters are just blocked. Nah, remember I cleaned them out with brake clean. They're not blocked. Was that mucking around with all that worth it? Yeah. It was for my poor little man brain, because I couldn't deal with it. I had to know, was that the problem? My engine stand is going to be glorious this time. Having to know a little bit more, and like I still don't know exactly because it was off the gauge, 80 plus, so I still don't know exactly, but having to know exactly what we're dealing with or as close as possible to what I'm dealing with. You call it what you want, ADHD, whatever, but you got to remember, I was born before those diagnoses, so mine's unmedicated. I expected oil everywhere, not water. just got to lever it forward. I forgot about that. You watch me lever this too far and completely knock it off the stand. I got really dodgy. Look at the length of them. Anyway, I couldn't get any shorter ones. So the only way to get that pin out, see the pin in the top there that runs down, that's what holds that spring in. The only way to get that apart is to halve that pump. The one thing that I didn't notice before that does look a bit sketchy is really flat blade screwdriver heads in an oil pump. I would have thought that would make it very difficult to get the correct torque setting on it, but anyway, has somebody been in here? Well, of course they've been in here. All this is rebuilt, you can tell. The stamping on the con rods, the grinding like we said before. We'll see. There's some crazy shit going on here. Look at this, wait. This is a pump that I bought predicting imminent failure of that pump. That's what it should have, not flat head. They would have been very, very difficult to get any sort of torque onto. Somebody's had this pump apart. And I'm going to have to now pull it apart. How do I get that apart? I'm predicting a air chisel of some description here at some stage. Oh no, maybe not, maybe not. Don't say it, Michael. Don't say that's 3, 1 more to go, because then it'll fail. You can take the vice grips off now, mate. No, still need them. Is this going to spring apart like all hell on me? No. Didn't think it had a spring in there, but that was sitting funny and I thought, oh, here we go. You're about to wonder why your forehead's bleeding. Everything looks fine in there. You wouldn't think there's anything untoward in there. It's only 2 gears, Michael. There is nothing wrong with that pump. Nothing. Let's have a look at that valve. See, that's where the pickup comes in, obviously. There's where the 2 gears sit, and that's where the oil comes in. That's the valve there. And if you look, well, let me get some light in there. Come in closer. Can you get closer? What if I hold it like that and turn it into the sun? See the valve? Use this one, Mike. Is it stuck? No. Was it stuck? Maybe. Why I say was it stuck? Maybe is you saw that little gap there. I can easily put that thingy in between that gap and just lift that plunger. It's not stuck at all. Now, when I first looked at it, I can actually show you. If I push that back down, see how there's no gap there now? See how there's absolutely no gap there? That's how it was when I first looked at it. And it was only that I got the end of that and pushed it in there to open it up. Do I believe that was the problem? Well, no. Yes and no. If that was stuck closed, it took a little bit of effort to get it the first time. Now it's moving free as anything. That might explain the high oil pressure, but it still doesn't explain the lifter restriction. So I'm going to go 50-50 here. Is this stuck? No. Do I trust it enough to go back in? Hell no. I'm going to cut that pickup off, throw it in the bin so I don't actually use it, because if that piston, right, is coming all the way across and contacting, I'm sort of thinking it would take a hell of a lot of pressure to force it back, because there wasn't any gap. If there's gap, it'll get it easy. So I'm just going to cut that weld, take that pickup out, throw that pump in the bin so I don't forget and try to use it on something else and go, hey, that's got a problem. But like I say, I'm not convinced, but I'll be honest, it did take a little bit of effort to get it to open back up that first time, so maybe. Righto, let's do that. Cut it off, put the new pump on, get into that. Today got away from me terribly because it's been a day of way too much talking. No, it's been a day of second guessing the crap out of myself. I decided, and I think I've said 100 times, I'm going to put a cam in it. Well, I've changed my mind 99 times. I'm going to put a cam in it. Something about this base circle just doesn't sit well with me. It's just so small, and I think it's always going to play in my mind, I'm just going to start from scratch. So that's the last time that's coming out. The second thing is, this oil pump, they're not stock, right? That looks like garden. See, that rod goes in the top of there, and that's what the distributor sits in. Well, the factory one has this, and that sits like that, but on the bottom. That's garden hose. I've cut the side out of it. Does that not look like garden hose to you? Which makes me wonder, has somebody been dicking around with this? Oh, and the pickup was soldered on. It wasn't wired. It wasn't welded on. It was solder. I started grinding it away and it was gold. No, what's that? Brazed. It was brazed on. Gold. But these bolts, that whatever the hell that is, maybe it's oil resistant hose, I don't know, but it sort of all adds up to somebody's been mucking with it. That spring is really light when you plunge it, which should do the opposite what it did. But in the back of my head I'm wondering, has that piston been modified? I just can't get my head around how that piston should be able to travel right up, basically completely closed, because how's the oil get in there to force it open? I suppose it's round, it can get down the sides, but I'm just not convinced enough to put that back in anyway. So that's going in the bin. I did check over the mains. I went back over them just to make sure everything looks fine in there. That is the last I'm going to speak about the oil pump, the cam, and the lifters. From here, we're just making that great. I'll see you in the morning. Okay, day one of making the free 327 grade again. Pickup is in. I am going to tack it to the new pump. So new pump is on, and we have parts. New camshaft, more importantly, new lifters. Timing set, they're the adapters, one for the old motor we broke and one for the new. And the all important is the zinc additive to break that cam in, and gaskets of course. So I'm just going to plug away at cleaning up some gasket surfaces. I'll get all this cleaned up and I'll see you then. Righto, so I'm cleaning up gaskets and it's just eating at me. The same question that's been eating at me for days and days. This is the new camshaft. Let me unwrap it. It's going to be harder than I thought. Okay, here's what I keep banging on about base circles. So this cam and this cam are roughly the same lift, but I want you to look at that bottom section just there, right? Look at the difference in that. This one has got about 60 thou base circle. That one is almost nothing. But yet they're the same lift. They're roughly the same lift. Why does that bug me? I don't know. So do I think the cam was the issue? No, absolutely not. So what's my thought process on that? Well, this cam is not out of that motor. It is, you saw it come out. But the reason they do reduced base circle cams is generally if you have a stroker motor with decent conrods and that in it, sometimes the conrods can almost touch the lobes, and so you reduce the base circle like that, extreme reduce the base circle, if you're worried about your stroker crank and rods touching the lobes. That ain't no stroker, that's a stock 327. So my idea is that's came out of something else. You don't specifically order a reduced base circle and then throw it in the stock 327, and that looks like it's got bugger all runtime on it. See how the lobes are a bit grey? Well, if you look at them, they've still got hints of grey, so that hasn't been run for a tremendous amount of time. I might be thinking, I don't know, did it get ran in a bigger motor, pulled out, went bigger or went smaller or went something different, went roller, and went, hey, we've got this used cam that was in that 383 or 400 plus inch, whack it in, and then problems, not because of the camshaft. But anyway, I don't know why I can't stop thinking about that, but that really bugged me. I got a fair idea. I was born in the late 70s, grew up in the early 80s, and that was before all these diagnoses came out. Back in the day, all they did was your parents let you grow a mullet, they sent you out into society and went, hey, see, we don't know what it is, there's something wrong with him, so you've been warned. Anyway, ADHD, autism, I don't know, something there. And it's funny, yesterday I said, we're not talking about the cam and lifters or oil pump ever again, but here we are. And no, I'm not putting the sump on, I'm just checking this pickup depth, see where it's going to land. I'm just going to measure how deep it needs to be and then just adjust him up and down. But that would make sense if it was a bit of a chuck together of other parts. I don't think it's too much of a chuck together. It's got a nice little steel crank and stuff in it, but if they just banged a second-hand cam into it, did they go and get cheap lifters? Because that's the problem. The oil band, I measured it last night. Like I said, can't sleep. I measured the oil band and it was like just under 10 thou, like I could just flick the edge of it with my nail. And then I grabbed the other lifter and it was 29 thou, and that's not taking into account the oil ring ridges. I'll show you. So here's what I'm talking about. Remember we talked about that gully? That little, that's called the oil band. I googled it, didn't know. The depth difference between that guy is just under 10 thou. I set a what do you call them? A feeler gauge is what they're called, in there, and then run a straight edge across there, just under 10 thou. That guy was 29 thou, and that's not taking into account those two little bands. So it's actually over 29 thou because I couldn't sit the feeler gauge flat on that. It sat on those ridges. That's the new one, and it's almost identical to the one in that other motor. So were the lifters the problem? Yes, 100% absolutely guarantee you they are the oil restriction in the top end. The oil can't get past to get to the next one, so they're not getting oil. Remember, 40 something psi increase in pressure just with that lifter in there from then swapping it over. So if that one is restricting it that much, the second one's not getting much oil. What gets past that? Even less. By the time you get to the back, we've got no oil pressure at the lifters. So they're not pumping up, they're collapsing. Were they cheap as chips lifters in a throw together? You know, hey, we'll just change it. Hey, we'll just change the cam and lifters. Cheap as chips throw together? Maybe. Yep, maybe. Did they then go, we've got no oil pressure at the top, and go in and modify the pump? Maybe. Can I now stop talking and thinking about it? Yes. Let's move on. The depth there, I'm calling that good. I'm just going to make a stud to go from there to there. I'm going to weld it to that bolt because I have no intention of ever undoing that bolt again. I might even put a tack on that. That's a dumb thing, I'm telling you. So even by my incredibly sketchy standards, this one's up there. What I've done is I've got a bolt there and bottomed that nut out on the thread, and I'm going to weld it to the main bolt, I should say, not the main, and then just put a bolt on top just to support that pickup, because with a decent cam it starts shaking. They can shake out of the pump, which is under there. That's a real thing. I had that happen on a big block, and I can tell you it wasn't a fun day. Didn't destroy the motor, but it wasn't fun. Engine out, sump off, just to put that back in and tack it. And that's what a lot of builders do, especially when they don't have these supports. See, it was a HQ sump. It was a HJ car, but it was a HQ sump. So it's only, the pickup's only that long. You've got nothing to support it to, so you just tack it to the pump. True story. I'm going to heat it up. I want to heat this so it gets better penetration without catching everything on fire, or with catching everything on fire. I'll see how hot I can get it, and no, I'm not going to touch it. Not yet. I'll wait till it's welded, then I'll touch it like an idiot. That did stuff all. Maybe I'll get the torch out. Oh, that died quick. Way too quick. More. Nearly touched it. I was going to move it across because it's not straight. Nearly touched it. You can't teach stupid. Oh, I just hit it and moved it again. Told you, you can't teach stupid, can you? That'll do. I'm putting gloves on so I don't touch it. Good enough for me. And I just got a nylock nut that I'm gonna bring down onto it. I heat that up because I'm told, by reputable sources of course, when you're doing thick steel like that, putting a little bit of heat in it just helps penetration. That's obviously not something I want to snap off. Look at that. Mint. Supported. So now we are a custom engine building shop. Nope, not even close. So I almost forgot to have a look at the cam bearings. I just wanted to check that they weren't sort of chewed up, because, and I know I said I'd never speak of this cam again, but look, see how it's got a scratch just there? So this just confirms exactly what I was thinking. That's got a scratch there. That bearing should have the same scratch, shouldn't it? Or it doesn't. Look, I'll see if I can get you in there. So this might be tough to get the light in there as well. Can you see the surface of that bearing down there in front of that light? There's not a mark in it. That cam got that scratch in a different motor. Thanks, Sherlock. Can you stop now? Yeah, I can stop now. I'm convinced. Righto, let's keep going. So while the motor's upside down, I'm actually going to lube the cam and install it, because that way you can still, if need be, you can support the cam going in with a bit of wire or something at the back. I'm going to use these little fellas. A couple little bolts I use to take the other one out and just gently put them in the front. And hopefully I can work my way in. And your cam lube, get all the all the lobes smother them in this, although I thought it might have been a bigger bag. Anyway, I might lube him up, but then put a bit on the base of the lifters when I drop the lifters in, so you got a blob on the bottom of the lifter sitting right on that lobe. It just doesn't seem a lot, does it? Don't waste it, Mike. Oh, don't waste it as it pours out everywhere. The journals I'm not going to worry about so much, because I'm going to prime it with oil pressure again the same way we did 37,000 times before when we were diagnosing issues. So the level of anxiety you experience when braking in a flat tapered cam is undescribable. You'll only ever truly understand what human misery is if you lose one. If you don't break it in properly, you figure out you've lost a cam lobe and you have to do it all over again. That, my friends, is the epitome of misery. Ask me how I know. You watch, I got that other cam in and out how many times without a problem. This one will just be painful. The worst bit is you've got to be super careful, because if you happen to scratch a lobe, that'll scratch a lifter and you will lose your camshaft. I did put a little bit on those journals, so just give them a twist over. You reckon I can get all the way in without using a wire? Come on, baby. Oh, it wants to live. I can see it. Okay, so putting our timing gear on, number one, I've got to get this gear off. But you see there's a keyway there, a Woodruff key or a keyway or whatever, and there's a 0 there. Well, that's the new gear, and you'll see it's got 0, and it's got A and R, obviously advanced and retarded. So you can actually set it up different. So if I want to set it up standard, which is what we're doing here, and then you see there, little 0, well, that matches up with little 0. So we're going to set him up standard or straight up. So it's just pulling that old gear off. See the gap here? And yes, that's really sketchy, but it worked. Now I'm going to heat this within an inch of its life, then probably touch it, then swear, then put gloves on, then put it on. I didn't think I was doing it then. That's hot because I can feel that through that glove. But anyway, I nearly caught it with the other hand. But anyway, I'll just give that a quick tap on. Just gentle. Perfect. Okay, so you can see that dot there now, and there's the 0 there. So when you sling your chain, just say you whack it on there and it's wrong, and here's your dot over here pointing out this way, just flip it a link over and roll your chain, and there's my little cam button hanging out, or dowel, that's what it'd be called. Are you even looking? Yeah, you are. And now I should be able to put my bolts in. You can get these funny little cam locks, not cam locks, like a bolt lock, and they're like a little flat washer with all these flat tabs that you fold over. I don't have one. So 25 foot-pounds and Loctite. Timing cover gasket on, then we're sump on, we're one step closer to greatness. Who painted this thing? And this is the moment where tremendous levels of self-doubt starts to creep in, because I think, what have I forgotten? We've re-torqued those mains, pump sorted, that sorted, cams in, can't think of a thing. Let's go. Looks good, looks good. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but it looks good. We've proved that already. So let's talk about cam break-in while I put this sump on, because let's face it, there's 8 million bolts in this sump. Why I say cam break-in is probably the most anxious thing you'll ever do as far as putting an engine together, is you get it wrong, you lose the cam. And I don't mean, where did I put that cam? I mean, if you don't break it in correctly, the lifters destroy lobes and you end up doing it all again. You send metal through everything, and if it's bad enough, it's crank grind time, bearings, the whole lot. So you get that bit wrong, you can destroy the whole motor. So the cam lobes don't have, they don't have an oil gallery running to a cam lobe. You can't, because it's doing that, right? The cam bearings do. They have their own galleries, but the lobe does not. The lobes rely on oil bleeding around the lifters, and let's not go back into those other lifters, probably wouldn't have enough oil bleeding around them, but oil bleeding around them through that oil band, running down off the lifter, down to the bottom of the lifter and onto the lobe. And also, and this is why you've got to break cams in the way you do, oil getting flung around inside the engine. To break a cam in, the minute it fires, I'm trying to do 2 things at once, so I'm struggling. I'm not that smart. The minute a cam fires, the minute the motor fires up, you have to put that thing up around 2,000, 2,500 RPM. Reason being, when you're first breaking it in, it needs as much oil as you can get to it, and the way to get it is all the sling off the crankshaft as it's spinning. See, the oil seeps out around your con rods and everything. That's how the sides of your con rods don't get hot and whatever. And the engine speed, throwing that oil out from there, lubricates the cam from oil spray inside the motor. If you tried to break it in at idle, it's not going to get that sling. You're only going to get the oil like leaking down from the side of the lifters. That's why you've got to break them in at 2,000 or 2,500 RPM. They just don't get enough oil. You will lose a cam lobe and you will hate yourself really, really bad. I looked at that gasket and went, that's not so bad. I can reuse that. And I had to pull myself up and go, no, Michael, you've come this far. Don't lower your amazingly high standards now. Anyway, I'm putting a new gasket on it. It deserves that much. It does now. It's got like, you know, 800 bucks worth of gear in it now. Do you want me to go through the price? Do you want me to go through at the end what I've put into it? Probably good to know. Might do that. If I forget, remind me. How's that work? Anyway, probably flip him now. Get everything like the balancer, the water pump and all that sort of stuff on. Anything stopping him from flipping? No. No, away we go. Ah, more oil coming from everywhere. Actually, a little bit of change of plan. I was going to go put all the front on. I want to get this intake manifold on so I can set overnight. It's starting to get away from me a bit. So, like I was saying about putting a big dollop on the lifters, so I'm going to use all this lube. Just like that. on the bottom of all the lifters and sit that in, because then that'll sit directly on top of the cam. Happy days. Sit that in the intake, so I end up putting the intake over the top of that bag. That was way too much, Michael, you dick. You don't have that much to waste. Kiss them little fellas together. You go, little man. So I got them all in and I borderline ran out of lube, and that lube is a specific cam and lifters break-in lube because it's slippery, but it's also almost sticky, and I guess the idea is it sticks to that surface that's not perfectly smooth on the cam, and it'll actually stay stuck to it rather than just running off like oil. Another thing with breaking cams in, if you've got a big high lift cam, right, generally how a lot of people used to break them in, and I say used to because they're almost a thing of the past now, is take one set of valve springs off. So you're reducing the load on the lifter and cam at break-in. So you take the inner spring out, just run it with the outer spring, and that way you don't lose your camshaft. You break it in, you put your other set of springs on. Yeah, it's a bit of mucking round. Not as much mucking around as pulling the whole motor apart again though, you know, if the cam failed. Oh, another thing, what I've seen, different ratio rockers, reduced ratio rockers to try and reduce the pressure again on the cam and lifters. These are about as reduced as I can get. These small block Chevs usually a 1.5 rocker ratio, and what that means is the lift of the cam is magnified by the rocker by 1.5 times. A small block can also use a 1.6, but realistically a pressed steel rocker probably only gives you like 1.4 and a half. But anyway, what my point there is, I can't reduce it any more than stock rockers. I've seen 1.3 big block Chev reduction rockers, whereas a big block Chev's got 1.73 and sometimes even 1.8. So reduce it right down so you don't lose your camshaft, but no one cares anymore because everything's roller. I care because it's old school. Done a lot of talking this episode, so much so I'm starting to annoy myself. Shut up. Just get it done. I'm trying. I genuinely am trying. And then there's little things like this that just won't go on. Why won't that go on? Oh, one more thing. While we're talking breaking in cams and all the rest of it, break-in additive is a must. Absolute must. That's zinc for flat tappet cams. You absolutely must add that to your oil, otherwise you will lose it. The zinc adds like a bit of a cushion between the two surfaces, and that's, a lot of modern oils don't have zinc like they used to because no one uses flat tappet. Refer back to my comment about no one cares about flat tappets anymore. Okay, so we're going to set the valves. I've just taken the lash out of them a little bit, but here's how I like to do setting valves on a new motor, or in this case a new camshaft. I get the firing order, right? 1, 8, 4, 3, split it, 6, 5, 7, 2. I kind of like doing it that way on a new camshaft because you're not rolling the motor over a lot, but a lot of other people will do it in a way that's when the intake closes, say a given cylinder, you watch the valves. When the intake closes, you set the exhaust, because if the intake's closing, the next stroke is the power stroke, right? Well, you know the exhaust is on your base circle. And the other one is when your exhaust opens, you know your intake is on the base circle. So it's called like ICEO. Exhaust, intake closes, exhaust open. So it's intake close, set exhaust. Exhaust open, set intake. But you are rolling it over a lot. I've got an exhaust open there on cylinder 1, right? Cylinder 1, first, the furthest forward cylinder. So the middle of the rock is what I'm aiming for. That's when the exhaust is open, it's exhausting the gas out. As that shuts, it wants more air, so it starts to open that intake. So it's the transition between the two valves, exhaust shutting, intake open, middle of the rock. So that exhaust is open, and if you watch the intake valve, which is next to it here, there it goes. It's just cracked. Oops, I've dropped that, but it's just cracked. So that exhaust is shutting, intake is opening. Now you get one here, so you set number 6, 2, 4, 6. Back them off till you get lash. And bring them down, jiggling the push rod up and down, right? Come in closer and have a look. So I'm just going to jiggle that push rod up and down. See, it's still got the slightest, that's got a little more. When that stops, alright, so you've got basically no up and down push rod movement, and then you're going to go from 12 o'clock, it's quarter turn, half turn preload. So from 12 o'clock, quarter turn, half turn preload. So it's 2, 4, 6. It's the only thing you got to remember is make sure you're getting your cylinders right. So that one we have set. The reason you don't roll it over a lot is now that this guy was in the middle of the rock, number 1, get back away. The reason I'm saying you don't have to roll it over a lot is because number 1 was in the middle of the rock there. Well, you know 8's going to do that next, because it's literally following the firing order. So 2, 4, 6, 8, this guy, and look, the exhaust is already open. So it's already basically there. So I'll turn this over, almost nothing. I'll bring it back in and you watch that valve. You might even be able to see the lifter start to move. So see that guy's risen? So that one's exhaust open, so we're waiting for the transition between, or the middle of the rock. And I'll turn this bugger all, because it's the next cylinder that's in that firing order there. Exhaust closing, intake opening. You see that? It's starting to rise that lifter up. So 8, set 5. 1, 3, 5. Yeah, just don't mess that up. So now we're over here on 5, and that's the only bit you got to not mess up is 1, 3, 5. 1, 2, furthest forward, number 1. So 1, 3, 5. So these guys. So we'll just go until they've got no push rod movement. And we go quarter, half, without taking my knuckles out on the dipstick tube. Quarter, half. 5 is done. And you just keep going like that. So now 4, 2, 4. You can actually see it's already on the exhaust valve opening. So I'll roll this again. Watch that lifter there. And you don't need to have the valley off even. You can be watching your rockers. So this guy's closing. Opened. So that's the middle of your rock. 4 is now in the middle of the rock. So 4's in the middle of the rock. So we're setting 7. So 1, 3, 5, 7. This guy over here. And so on and so on. You're picking up what I'm putting down though. You're not rolling it over a lot to get the next valve. So you're wiping as little of that cam lube off as you can. Anyway, I'll keep going through these valves, get this intake on, get ready to start priming some oil into it. So we're back to pretty much this point. I got some new pulleys, look. So this time I'll actually be able to mount up my alternator and run a proper belt out to it, so that I guess I don't have to disassemble it again. It can just get plopped in the car. And there is a couple other bits. I did say in the last episode, I said every time we use this stand, it's going to get better and better. Well, it will. We're getting pulleys this time. I'm going to get my temp working this time, because I've got to run it pretty much for half an hour. And if you can imagine half an hour between 2000 and 2500 RPM, like I said, you've got to get that oil slinging around inside to lube that cam. It's probably going to produce some temp. Some cam manufacturers say you can run it for 10, shut it down, another 10, shut it down, another 10, shut it down. I think I'm just going to wing it, see how far I can get before it starts to want to build a bit of temperature. Monitor how long that is. If I need to shut it down and go again, we'll do that. It's anxiety plus breaking cams in. I think anyone that's done it before will tell you exactly that. It becomes one of those things you're confident you can do it, but it's got to start first go and straight to 2.5 or 2000 RPM. The upside is I've already had that carburetor running. To be honest, I'll probably break it in 2 or 3 times. This will become a party trick while it's waiting to go in the HK. Have it sitting on an engine stand, and every time you're having shed beers, want to start at 327? Anyway. Alright, I'll see you in the morning. So here's where we're at. Everything's plumbed up. I'm just topping off the water or coolant. We've got the zinc additive going in, and we're going to wind it up. We've got as many gauges as I needed plumbed up now. We've got temp and oil pressure, mechanical oil pressure. I spared you the pain this morning of watching me put it back on the stand and plumb it back up, because let's face it, it feels like we've been here before. Anyhow, I'm just going to give that a little bit longer to drain and get all of the goodness out of that. Then we can wind up the oil pressure. That'll mix the zinc additive into the oil, obviously. Hopefully throw it everywhere it's got to go. Anxiety through the roof. Hate breaking in cams. No, that's a lie. I actually love breaking in cams when it all goes well. It's just that wave of misery when it doesn't go well, but we should be fine. We know the carby was right. Won't take 2 seconds, I'll time it. We've got a little bit more coolant to go into it. I'm just letting it bleed down through the motor now. What could possibly go wrong? So while that cooling system's still bleeding, we'll see what we get off the drill. Oh, a flat battery is what we get off the drill. We'll have another go. Different drill, new battery. So we've got pressure straight away, almost 40 psi. That's more like what I expected to see the first time, you know, when it hit the roof and everything. There's something definitely familiar about this. Let's just hope we've got a better result this time. Oh, nailed it first go. Right, a final top off for the water, or coolant. When I first fire it, geez, that's assuming it's going to fire. There's no reason it shouldn't. Apprehension, yes. When I first fire it, it's going to rattle. That'll be the lifters if they haven't finished pumping up, or if they've got a little bit of air in them. That'll be essentially the air bleeding out of the lifters, so they will rattle straight up. Then it'll clear itself out. I'm going to bring that idle right up and just let it go. Fan's on straight away as soon as I crank it, and just hope I don't run out of fuel. Why I say hope I don't run out of fuel, I've got 10 litres, it's completely full, but I don't know how much it's going to take. So I guess we'll find out. Why did that shut down? Why are we shutting down? Shut it down. That would be why I shut it down. Well, that was going well. Oh geez, who would have thought that's hot? Who would have thought that? I thought I had them zip tied up pretty good. I do not. I'll give it a second to cool. We'll replace that and we'll go again. I'm gonna have to knock that plug out now that it's swelteringly hot. If anything, a little bit lean, is it? Anyway, I'm just going to try and move this header down a little. See, that needs to go up there and get them away as well. So all I've done is I took a boot off number 7 because it's nowhere near the header, and I've taped it up. Like I've put the burnt boot on that side and taped the hell out of it. So see if I can catch it on fire again. I'll put the plug back in. See what I mean? Cam break-in apprehension, stress. It's going right though, except for those little shut-offs at the start. But that could have been as simple as still gaining enough oil in those lifters. Now we want all this to stay up here now. I'm going to zip tie that up there. So it's all the way. Zip ties. So there's clearance there. It must have just fell over and touched it. It must have. It caught fire. The thing is, I don't have a tacho, so was that more than 2000? Was it on 2000? I don't know, it was high. It was definitely high enough. Here we go, popping through that carby again. Just give her a little rest. It's starting to get a bit warm. Just let him cool down. I probably could have just ran the hose into the radiator. Vary the RPM up slightly and down slightly, I guess, to change the pattern of the oil sling that's happening inside the crank, just to try and, I know, get all aspects of the cam and lifters really stoked. not responsive when you get on the throttle. That's a total of half an hour, but I'm just going to let it go there. I've dropped the revs a little bit. It can just, I don't know, overbed itself in. I just wanted to go a little bit longer, then I'll let it idle. Even after you've broken them in, you really shouldn't be letting it idle for long periods of time. The next time I fire it up, I'll probably give it 5 minutes doing exactly that again. The anxiety levels are dropping. When we get closer, you can still sort of hear a bit of a rattle, like a lifter rattle, but having bedded in a lot of these cams, you'll tend to find you're not usually standing next to an engine when it's doing 2,500, 3,000 RPM like if you're in the car. It will make noise like that when you're on the throttle, giving it some. When I back the throttle off, back to idle, then if it's rattling, then the apprehension goes up. Anyway. Not 100% sure why we won't idle, but I guess I can work that out now that the cam's broke in. Be interested to see why it won't idle though. Should I leave it for a bit? Let it cool down for a bit. Not that it got that super hot. It was sort of going between, it's got a 73 degree thermostat, 160 Fahrenheit, what's that? Yeah, just under 70. So 160 degree Fahrenheit on that gauge is just under 70. And it's sort of sat between 76 and 93. 93 is getting up there, hence why I hit it with the hose. But that's generally the real issue with breaking in new motors and new cams, is keeping them cool for that period of time. Anywho, that's that so far. So as far as I can tell, it all went well. The only way you can really tell if you lost a cam lobe or a lifter in amongst all that is if you let it idle now and you could hear a distinct tapping, then you knock the covers off and your sole dies a little tiny bit when you find one of your rockers has clearance. But I can't hear any tapping, and like I was saying, well, I was trying to say when it was, I don't know, at 2,000 RPM and we walked over there to try and hear one another, when it's sitting on 2,000 RPM, you can actually hear a little bit of a chatter in that from the lifters. You got to remember, you're not usually under the bonnet of a car when it's doing 2,000 RPM. So it probably makes those noises anyway. It's literally lifters doing lifter stuff. It's once you bring that revs down, that's when you're going to hear if it hasn't gone well. Sounds fine. Fighting with that temperature is the hardest bit with brake and stuff like that in. That's working pretty hard, and I think when I first started it, I probably had it well past 2,500 to be honest. If that's idle there now at say 900-ish, yeah, it was up there. I had it singing. Maybe next time I should have a tacho on it. Yeah, whatever. It's done now. Oh, I did write a list. Do you want to see roughly how much it cost? Righto, I got my list. You sure you want to know? I'll put it up in the top corner of the screen, but I've basically gone through cam, lifters, rebuilt carb, timing chain. There's a whole heap of list. I'll put it up there, but essentially I've counted everything, and I've still missed the distributor I already had, the leads I had, things like the headers, already had it all. It came to a total of $3,026.23. That got away a bit, but you take out the cam and lifters and the carb rebuild if you just used an old carby and just threw a cheap set of lifters at it, and you can knock $1,000 out of that pretty quick. The other stuff is like new balancer, and I'm counting an alternator and all that sort of thing. You could scrounge around. Second thing is the cradle. This whole contraption, how much did that cost me? Well, the actual little cradle there that the Chevy sits on, the Chevy stand if you like, was only $114.35. The radiator was $200. It came with fans, although I put a bigger one on it, and I'm glad I did. The caster wheels were $99. Did I say the radiator was $200? Yeah. Caster wheels were $99 and the battery was $240. So $653.35 are worth every cent of it, I think, anyway, because I'll use that stand now a dozen times. The next one I've got to go on it is a Cleveland, and ironically we're going to be breaking in another cam because it's got a snap timing chain, so we might have bent valves, all sorts of different problems to sort out. Anyhow, that's the 327. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Where's my tool? How do I do this to myself? I like the sound of that, but I reckon it's a 4.5 Cruiser 79 series. Unmedicated until beer time. So fully closed to the point where, thank you for whoever bought that merchandise. That's the sound of Shopify going, somebody just bought something. Thank you whoever that was. This episode's turning into Diagnosing Why Michael Can't Sleep. It's my simple little man brain, that's all it is. If you've got tremendously low standards, you don't really get disappointed with much. I hate this tool, I really do. Oh, and that's why. This shit tool. I'm gonna throw this tool in the bin. I seriously am, or make something else out of it.